Hi everyone, welcome to today's Seer 365 showcase. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm joined today by Ross from Precision Point. Ross, how are you?
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm good, thanks Dan.
Fantastic, fantastic. Good to see you again, and look forward to seeing today's demo. So thank you very much. So here today, you're going to be providing us with a bit of quick overview of your unique data solution for Dynamics ERP. And what we're hoping to highlight here is that the approach is different to the normal implementation. And hopefully you're going to show us as well how you can ensure repeatability and actually help service your client base within the ERP ecosystem. So, bit of a tall order, but hopefully you'll be able to show us all of that. I've got every faith in you today.
Thank you. Absolutely. So I'll run through a slide deck to give people a bit of an overview of what Precision Point is, why we differ, as you say, and how we kind of run about things, and then a little bit of show as to what we do with the data, because we're all about the data and making sure your BI is fed correctly, and then a little bit of a view into what it might look through Power BI as a visualization front end on top of the data set. So all the different facets that you might need within a BI project. But yeah, hopefully it'll be fairly informative, a little bit informal in terms of how I run through things, and we can have a bit of a Q&A at the end if anyone's got any questions or specific things to raise.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Over to you then, Ross.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So I'll start off with a slide deck. Everyone loves a slide. So we are Precision Point. We produce BI for Dynamics ERP systems. That's all we do. Nothing else. No other systems. 100% Microsoft Shop, which is hopefully a nice thing for those people on Dynamics. And what I'll show you through the next couple of slides is really what Precision Point is and how we differ. So couple of sort of key things to look at. We look at ourselves as an expedited BI solution, i.e. you can install Precision Point incredibly quickly, or we can do so depending on who wants to take the bit of work. Generally, we can be installed and up and running within as little as 2 weeks. Now, during that 2-week period, we're going to install Precision Point as a data solution. We're going to configure and basically do a reconciliation on data, so you get real valid data straight out of the box. Our core base model covers 80+% of general data requirements a customer may have straight away. Pretty good. So you hit the ground running. And further filling any gaps can be done very quickly. The model is designed to be extendable, and you can bespoke it quite well without any complex development. Again, it's all Microsoft based backend, etc. And what we provide is a managed service, which I'm pretty sure no one else out there in the data world does. So we don't just give you a tool and say, there you go, if the tool breaks, give us a shout. We constantly monitor to make sure that your data's there, your data's correct, everything's audited, everything's as it should be. And even to the point, if you have a question, you say, I don't believe this number, we will reconcile it and tell you where that number came from and why it is as it is. So it's the usual story. Whatever goes into the system is what we will report. We won't change that information as such, but we will faithfully replicate what has been put into the ERP. Okay, and a big part of working with you guys at Seer and everyone else out there in the wider dynamic space is we're looking to partner with people, and we believe that with what we offer, it's a great partnering opportunity. Very good margin. I think a lot higher than most of the margin percentages you'll see across the board in other solutions. As we mentioned, we're pretty much up and running within a couple of weeks. Obviously, projects can go longer or shorter depending on the scale, but we're very much faster than a DIY or a build project from end to end. We provide obviously revenue streams, initial purchase, ongoing support and service, etc., that we work through with partners and various different models that we can work on. Everything's Microsoft technology, so whether you want us to pick up work as a partner or whether you want to skill up, the basic skills that would be needed to look after Precision Point are SQL Server, Azure, and so on and so forth. So it is all really based around standard Microsoft stack that people have previous knowledge of. Okay, we also track Microsoft's roadmap. As you can imagine, it's quite difficult with a lot of changes, particularly at the moment with the 365 world and how everything's evolving. But our product evolves, so each new version of Dynamics that comes out, we're on top of each Microsoft technology that comes out. So obviously things like the data lake, that's fairly new, I guess, in the scheme of things, and even the newer versions of Power BI. And we're looking already at the sort of fabric system that Microsoft's talking about at the moment. So we track that to make sure we're on top of things. Um, and then repeatability, something you kind of mentioned in the overview at the start, something we're very keen on. If you install Precision Point in one customer, install it in another customer, what you will see is very much a similar solution. So the main bones of what we offer will be the same between each of your customers or each implementation, whether it be AX or NAV or so on and so forth. So everything follows the same methodology. Obviously, you can customize on top to for those back needs that people might have, but the core of it is that we're a base solution to work specifically with Dynamics, and we work with each of those versions in a very cohesive way. Okay, so that's some headlines really. Couple of other sort of small bits about key features. As I mentioned, we're Dynamics only. We work with Nav and Business Central, AX and D365. So really all of the versions going back to I think version 4 of each platform. So very, very old and all up to the very latest. Um, we provide a data model, a data warehouse data models on top of that, and we see it as true self-serve. So you don't need to understand table structures, you don't need to understand lots of complex database sort of information. You just need to know, I want to look at customers, or I want to look at items, or I want to look at account codes and dates, etc. And you select what you need. So we really take the heavy lifting out of the data side of things. Some other things that I think are fairly important to get across: consolidation. So we will consolidate, if required, multiple instances of Dynamics. So if you've got two AXs or an AX and a D365, we can join them together and give you a single point solution. Same with Nav. We have done Nav to AX and D365, etc. A little bit more complex because of the different shapes of the data, but we can make it work if need be. As I mentioned earlier, guaranteed data accuracy. We've got a self-reconciling model, which I'll come to in the next couple of slides. And obviously, I've mentioned that we support the system and the data that sits within it, which I don't think anyone else out in the marketplace does. And again, given the fact that we cover a huge number of requirements from the off and can plug the gaps for additional requirements very quickly, we return a really good ROI, and we can get yourselves or your customers off the ground and running really, really quickly with a really good solution. So even if you've got a lot of customization required, you can still start working on the Precision Point system very, very quickly and get cohesive numbers out. Okay, so that's just some top level stuff. As I say, today's a fairly quick run through to give a bit of a flavor of what we are. But the whole crux of what Precision Point is doing is providing a real self-service data model for Dynamics. Okay, now little bit, couple of slides. Again, apologies, no one likes a slide. Really, how we work differs quite heavily. Besides the sort of managed service, etc., what we do with data is quite different. Okay, so the way I look at this is we have two data sets. We have what we call business and finance, and we have inventory as two separate things. Now, we separate these for a reason that I'll come on to, but what we look at, finance and business, is everything whatsoever in your dynamic system that has or will have an impact on your company's bottom line, i.e., things that will eventually hit the general ledger and become part of your management accounts. Now, this is really everything you see on screens: your sales, your inventory, your accounts receivable, payables, and so on and so forth. All of those things will feed into the general ledger at some point. So within this business and finance model, we really again split that in half. We've got open transactions, so you can look at operational data, so your orders, your open invoices and purchases and all those good things as they are. It's easy. You can look, I've got 10 sales that are sitting there as sales orders for customer A. Fantastic. That's bread and butter, pretty standard, but we enrich that slightly with how we treat the data and just make it easier to read. The more complex and the more intelligent part of what we have within Precision Point is stuff that has been run through the system in the ERP system, has hit the GL. So the kind of example I use is if you raise 100 sales orders with 1,000 rows of data, they become 100 invoices with 1,000 rows of data. When they hit the general ledger, they could be one entry on your profit and loss for revenue that's coming in, one debit on your balance sheet for inventory that's going out. So by the time they've hit the top level reporting part of the system, where your business is reporting itself at the GL level, you've lost all of the granularity, you've lost all of the ability to track the information because the ERP system is maximizing the efficiency of what it's doing with data. And that's where we do something quite different. So we will look at the general ledger. We will look at, let's say, sales account. I always think about sales. It was a good thing for me. We'll look at the sales account. We'll look at a particular day, and we run through a logic set that says, right, we've got £1 million in the sales account for the 5th of the month or whatever. Our system will say what of that data is native to the general ledger, i.e., what is a journal? Let's say it finds 100 grand. It pins that 100 grand and says it's got 900 left to find. It will then go through all of the tables and the quite disparate structures that sit behind Dynamics, and it will look to reconcile that 900k across all of the subledger integration, or sorry, subledger tables where the data has been lost as the data's moved through that process of posting up into the general ledger. In doing that, we're doing two things. We're reconciling that our original million in the GL equals 100,000 in the GL and 900,000 from subledgers. So we make sure the data self reconciles and is always correct. Likewise, because we're hitting all of those sub areas of the system, we're collating the information that's sat in those areas. So your customers, your items, your product groups, your cost centers, whatever it may be, is picked up from those sub areas of the system and pulled back in. So you can look not only at the top level number, but at what makes that number up and how. So you can see summarized information split back out into its granular part, all integrated and all reconciled across the system, which is quite different. It's something we hold a patent on, so it's quite a different kind of approach to things. So, a real top to bottom data setup. Someone's alarm's going off. So that's the finance and business side in a nutshell. As I say, everything that's going to have or will have that hit onto your company's bottom line. I mentioned we also have an inventory module. Now, anything that happens with inventory that has an impact on the company's numbers will obviously be visible within the finance and business module, because it's moving along and having a financial transaction impact. But there are things that happen in the inventory that don't have that impact, i.e., the aging of debt, the movement, aging of debt, aging of inventory, the movement of inventory between locations, and so on and so forth. So we give you a view of that in its own data set. Now, this differs from what you would get within the core of Dynamics itself, simply for the fact in Dynamics, if you say, what's my stock level of item X, Dynamics will go off and perform a live calculation, say, yeah, we've got this many on the shelf, this many packed, this many in reserve, whatever, and it will give you a total at the end. What it can't do is give you a where were we at position, or what happened between A and B position. The way Precision Point works is we pick up all of the information through the InventTrans tables that sit behind Dynamics. We build that up into a cumulative view of all information across all time. So you can look at where are we now, and also where were we at any point in time, or what happened between points A and B. So just again, a different view on that, really expanding on the BI experience that you'd have, and providing again more value to your customers in terms of what they can see within the model. Okay. Final slide, because we're getting there. Just a little bit about consolidation. As I mentioned, we consolidate multiple instances of Dynamics together, and we've got customers that are running 2 instances of nav up to 35 instances of Dynamics AX and 365, all consolidated, mapped together to give an overall huge consolidated system, pulling in data potentially from outside sources, and that could be spreadsheets with transactional data, spreadsheets with budgets. It could be from another ERP system where we're doing some data mining, pulling that in and modeling it to look like Dynamics structured data. Again, it's all segregated. You don't muddy the waters by us throwing it all into one pot and saying there it all came from the same source. You can always see where it's come from, but we can also give you those top line numbers all fed through. So, this obviously helps support, particularly in a finance scenario, really complex closed report cycles without having to go off and do a load of manual work or using tools like Hyperion, etc. All of this is again governed by our core engine. So each of the dynamic systems will have gone through the reconciliation and validation process. Anything from outside, obviously, we can only influence to a certain degree. So if you're pulling in another ERP, we can only align the data, but you can see where that data feeds in. Okay, so a lot of, again, value that we can add if people have larger ecosystems of Dynamics platforms. Okay, that's it for the slides at the moment. I know it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, quite a lot to take in, but I'll show you a couple of things now that hopefully will bring things to life a little bit more. So I'll just exit my slide deck if it lets me do it. Okay. And first of all, I'm going to go into an Excel file. Apologies, it's an Excel. I know Excel is not the most exciting thing, but hopefully this will bring to life how we kind of structure our data. So as I mentioned, Precision Point is really providing a data model. So if you imagine your Dynamics database and your chosen front end tool, getting the data from Dynamics into that front end tool is the bit where we kind of specialize. So we position that data in between the system and the front end. So at the moment, I'm connected to Precision Point Dataset. I'm using an Excel add-in that allows me to play with data, and I'll show you again in Power BI in a minute. But the data is really where our focus is. We can help building reports within these tools. Power BI, we can provide pre-canned reports. The Excel tool, we can provide pre-canned reports. Whatever people need, basically. But really, I'm just trying to show you today about the data and the value you can add to your customers. So if we go back to thinking about that data model that I've just run through in the slides, all I've done here is I've dumped onto a page measures. I've got an amount, and I can look at quantity, so we can give you that against any information. This is test data. It's pretty old test data as well, but again, just to give you a flavor, where I've got a bunch of companies and an all company member. I've just selected a year and split it out into months, and I've got all accounts that sit within the system. So really basic at the moment, a bit of a nonsense number, but what I want to show you is the structure of this data. So if I drill into all accounts, I've got a balance sheet, I've got my P&L, and all this structure is read directly from in the Dynamics system that you're working with. If I drill into P&L, it gives me my totaling accounts that have been defined, and again, it's read from Dynamics. If I drill into gross profit, I can see my revenues, I can go to my sales, and so on and so forth, and I can keep drilling down till I get to the nominal codes. All of this is based on the totaling structures that exist within Dynamics. So it's picked up automatically, as are the dates, as is everything else within here. So nothing you're seeing is going to be contrived within Precision Point. It's read from the source, and all we've done is enrich the data. Okay, so at the moment, what I've got is an unformatted, pretty boring looking P&L statement to some degree. Okay, but again, to show you, obviously, I can switch now. I'm on a P&L and I can look at quantities if I want. Obviously, it doesn't have much context at the moment, but just to show you where we've integrated the data, you can see that, and this become more important as we go through. I can obviously switch between companies as that exist within the system. If we have a consolidated model, all of those companies could sit in here in a list. They could be grouped and structured however you want them. I'll just leave it at all for now. But as I say, it's an unformatted P&L. What I'll do for a little bit of context, I'm going to select the sales account. So I'm just going to click select on there. Okay, so I'm now kind of filtered in a little bit more. I've still got the same number. I'm going to add something in. So our structure, I'm sorry if this is not the clearest thing to see on the screen, but all of the nodes we've got in here are the way we've grouped the data. These are all of the ways to aggregate effectively. So I'm going to take customer vendor. So I've got vendors, I've got customers. I can look at them independently. I've got something called trade, which I'm going to add in. Okay. I'll put trade in here, which is rows. So think of this as a pivot table, and I'll put my filtered account into the page. So I'm still going to have that 401100, and I'll hit finish. Okay. Still got my same number. This is my customer vendors. So I've got customers, I've got vendors, I've got no analysis. This is fairly important. So everything that's come in from a customer transaction to sales, so from your accounts receivable account, will be labeled with a customer. Anything that's happened in the general ledger will be no analysis because it's not subject to having a customer. So this is your journals. So, if you think you've got a salesperson that says, I've done X amount of revenue for the month, then that's the number they would have. If finance says, well, I don't have the same number at the top level, the difference will be in that no analysis bucket. The difference will be where the customer is not stamped on the transaction, becomes journals, might be rebates, might be something else, but we expose that data without having to go off and play with it because we've pulled this information back. Likewise, we've got vendor in here because people say, well, why would we sell anything to our vendors? But invariably, people sell to the vendors and buy for their customers at some point, or transactions go to the wrong place. And it makes sure that you've always got that information there. Okay. Just going to hide now anything empty. I just wanted to show the point of that no analysis.
Ross, just before you show us the data in all of its glory, would you be able to just hide the text box at the bottom if we're ready for any unfurls?
This one.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
There we go. Cool. No worries. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much.
So if I double click on customer, it's going to expand out and it's going to give me the different customer groups that have been configured within the dynamic system. So whatever you label these, whether it's Interco or retail like we've got here, etc., it will show you those labels that we pick up. If I drill into retailers, again, I've got a bunch of customers in there. I can now start looking again. I can go to quantity if I want to. Again, not so much context in terms of what we're looking at. I can look at the different companies. I could move this around and re-nest it. All the data's joined. But again, if I take a step further, if I go and look at, let's say we've got these guys here, Oak Company, got a decent amount we've sold to them. So let's do a bit more analysis on Oak Company. If I select Oak Company, so £2 million worth of goods or dollars, whatever it may be, and I want to see what I've sold them, no problems. I go and get my items, drop my items in, and I'm just going to give it some context. I want to look at the items at a classification level. So let's hit on that. So now I can see I've sold the Oak Company X amount of audio, X amount of TV, and X amount of cleaner. And I can still drill down into the individual products, no problem at all. And I can keep going down. My sum totals will still be the same as we go through, obviously taking out the fact I've got totals in there. The way the data is structured, because it's built into a specific data model, if I say, well, I'm not entirely sure why, I don't believe I've done £3 in speaker cable, for example. Let's go and have a quick look and see. I can use my drill to, wherever it's gone, drill to detail, and I will drill through and see what makes up that 3K. So this will return in a second. Okay, so there's my invoice for a sales order for that specific customer that Oak Company sold to. So you can start splitting down the numbers. You see the constituent parts. The top level of the report is aggregated, summarized, and there for you to play around with. When you drill into the data, you can see the transactional information that makes up that number. So everything's in there, everything's integrated. We're obviously only going to scratch the surface at this stage, but hopefully that gives you a quick view that we've gone from the top level unformatted P&L into zeroing in on your sales account, zeroing into a customer, zeroing in onto what we've sold them, and then being able to see the transactional data that sits behind that number. So hopefully the value starts to add up. All of this is out of the box. So once we've installed, what we're seeing here immediately is available. Likewise, the sort of reports that the customer would get would be a properly formatted P&L, a structured sales report by customer, etc. If I switch over now just quickly into Power BI, just to give a bit of a view, this is connected again to a similar data model. Here's a bit more of a formatted P&L with your profit on there. We've still got the ability to switch between the companies and the years and periods, etc. We enrich it with things like year to date, last year, etc. And obviously you'll see on the screen at the moment we've got a budget and variance values and variance percentages, so we can see where we are year on year. You could deploy this based on the data, based on the report, etc. But using that same kind of thought process we've just looked at, if I expand the sales account, there's my direct sales, GL transactions, and so on and so forth. I can look at Bill's bicycle service, my 774196. There's no specific budget in there for that particular customer. But if I drill into that, I can see from the data what's been sold. I can drill into that and I can go and see the specific transactions in there. Likewise, if I want to, within Power BI, because of how we put this together and how our reports work, I can drill through into sales details if I want to. And there I pulled up a full list of everything that's kind of worked. If I just reset back, go back into here. Okay, so give it a second to wake up. Go back through, back into my P&L, back into my sales, back into my direct sales, and then Bill's bicycle. So I've got my 774196. It's to make sure you've got that, cohesive data running throughout the whole system. I can switch into my customer analysis, for example, and there's my Bill's bicycles, there's my 774K, and there's, just we all know Power BI, we all know the power of it. We've got some stuff built here on our product split. We've got our top 5 items all derived from the same data, and sales percentage versus last year and trending patterns all built from that same thing. But the general message I'm trying to convey here is that the data model's there to be digested, whether you use something like Power BI. And as I say, we can provide pre-built Power BI reports or assist in building bespoke ones, or use Excel or use AN other front end. We've put the data into a usable format. We've made sure it's valid. We constantly, perpetually maintain, check, analyze, and reconcile that data within the system, within support, to make sure everything's right. And we track Microsoft. We're there to get you and your customers up and running with a BI solution in the quickest possible time with the most value that can be added. That's the kind of crux of what I really wanted to show today. More than happy to answer questions at this stage if people have got anything to ask. I'll just stop sharing my screen at this point, if I can work out how to do so, somewhere around here. And then we're back to being able to see each other's faces a little bit easier. But yeah, any questions? More than happy to run through.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ross. Alex, absolutely fantastic. I guess for myself, having sort of worked in the industry, I've got a couple of questions I'd probably like to pose to you.
Cool.
I think the temptation a lot of the time with particularly Power BI visualizations and data is that actually companies will probably try and give this a go themselves, with varying levels of degrees of success. Let's say, you know, what above and beyond will Precision Point be able to offer above sort of a DIY solution, let's call it?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean we've put a few things out there. If you look on our website, there's a few things we've put on build versus buy, and what are you getting out of these solutions? The primary things are governance. If we go back to the days of Excel where everyone did their own thing and everyone ends up with legacy reports, no one knows how they were put together, where the data's come from, and so on and so forth. We're kind of de-risking that scenario by putting a proven guaranteed data model out there. Person A connects the same data as person B. The definition of that data is the same across the board. The accesses are all controlled. So it's, as I mentioned within the demo and the slides, if you connect into your dynamic system directly with your Power BI or whichever other front end, you've got people doing their own data modeling generally. And person A might not model the same thing as person B. They might use a different field or a different scenario, etc. So having a model like Precision Point, everything is one definition, one governance, and everyone has that same model. Likewise, the time it takes, we've seen, if you look at a lot of Gartner research, etc., 90% or something of BI projects fail. Just simply based on the convoluted way in which people get the data. Having a guaranteed data model gives you a lot less risk. It's there to be used, to be digested. Our view has always been that we want people to make use of data to actually use the insights and not spend all their time going off and mining the data. So it's the fast track, the governance, and so on that I think we bring to the table there.
Great, that's good to know. I mean, and it probably leads me nicely on to sort of my next question. So you offer these services, there's a wraparound, there's a lot of governance that you put before it, but how does that impact our partners? What sort of partner program do you offer in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so we're pretty flexible in our partner programs. We will do really whatever suits best the individual partner. Our kind of master reseller in the US has pretty good model. They do quite good sales through Precision Point. We will generally install and configure and do a degree of their first line support. They will pick up maybe second line support, do some further customization themselves. Likewise, if you wanted to be fully skilled up by Precision Point to pick this up yourself as a partner, we're happy to skill people up to run with things themselves. Equally, we're happy for people to do their own support and everything in between, really. So we're very flexible in terms of our partnering. So we understand, one shoe doesn't fit all. If people want to fully own things with our support, no problems. If they just want to sell into their customer base, and we'll pick it up and work out, a commission percentage or whatever. Again, really happy to work with that. So we understand there's always going to be differences there.
No, that's good to know, because I think it's probably from your experience with projects, data can often be, let's call it, a little bit of an afterthought perhaps, and we swing back around to it towards the end of the project. So actually, it's really useful for you to say you can help sort of de-risk that scenario and support channels with your expertise. Really, I think is what you're trying to say on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something we've seen before from certainly with our own client base is if you just think about something, I say as simple as, but it's not as simple. If you think about a migration from one version to the newer version of an ERP, a lot of our customers that have used Precision Point for multiple years will actually use our system because of the way it works with data, because it validates the information to make sure that the migration of data has worked correctly. Yourself with the partner network, everyone working in Dynamics, everyone wants to make sure that a migration is successful. But a lot of the time, it's the people on the coal face, who we say, are looking and saying, right, I can go into my ERP system, I can see that the opening balance of an account looks like it should do, but they're not necessarily going to have the visibility of the transactions that make that up. Whereas within Precision Point, you can split that number, have a look at it. So people will use us not to just report, but to assist them with migration processes, to make sure that the data structures are correct, to validate really end to end across information. And to us, the more we can be utilized in that way, the less risk there is to the client. And again, a new ERP project, if someone's migrating from a non-Dynamics onto a Dynamics system, making sure you've got the visibility of your data from the off. A lot of people, like you say, that it's that afterthought of, have we got the correct reporting? We look at it that, don't say what reports have I had previously, what did I have in the past. You end up with 3,000 reports just because someone used it some time ago in the past. We've always had this thought of, what questions do you want to answer in your business? And if you think across the whole business, the whole estate of your data landscape, what questions you need to ask, a lot of the time it's going to come down to not that many variables: customers, items, value, inventory, XYZ. You might find that 1,000 questions can be answered by 10 different data nodes. And for us, we look at our data model, it will have those 10 data nodes in it. And this is why we can service quite quickly a large percentage of the questions that will be asked across a business and a large number of those reports. But it's being sensible about it. Again, if you look at some of the marketing material we've got out in the field, it's all marketing, like everyone says, but it's valid in terms of what it says. We've got customers that have been very clear to us that when they've moved on to Precision Point from their legacy reporting system, they've gone from thousands of specific, this report does this thing, to much smaller number, maybe 10, 20 key reports with some slicers that allow them to have a different view of the world, that service just as much as those 1,000 reports, but in a much more cohesive and simplified manner. So it's all geared up towards that.
Brilliant. It sounds like a very refreshing approach to your reporting and the way that you look at things moving forward, yeah. Not necessarily historically. But Ross, that's been a real eye-opener for myself. It's given me some really great information to work with there. So I really appreciate you taking the time for the demo and joining us on the showcase today. It's been brilliant. I'm sure everyone watching will agree with that one. So thank you so much for that.
No worries. Thank you. I think you guys might have the link to our website to pop up in case people want to jump on and have a little navigate round.
Absolutely. And what we'll do, there we go, right up in front of you. And then what we'll do as well is we'll share that on the LinkedIn article as well. So thank you so much for your time, Ross. It's been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Speak to you soon.
Brilliant. Take care.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.